So make a playground plan, but get all the kids to make a playground plan. I want you to notice which children don't have a plan. I want you to notice maybe, children who don't know the rules, because the rules often change in a game. I remember one of my students telling me that handball, the rules changed depending who was playing. And the way he made sense of it, because he used to get really angry that people were breaking the rules, the way he made sense of it was relating it to Mario Kart. And I've never played Mario Kart, but the way he explained it was Mario Kart has different levels. So when he played with one group of boys, it was Mario Kart level 1, Mario Kart level 2, Mario Kart level 3 with different boys, because he found that confusing that the rules change. But apparently some games, the rules change. So that was how he understood it. So actually finding out from children. Hi everyone, welcome to the Sue Larkey podcast. As I always say, you have to embrace difference to make a difference. Let's dive into today's podcast. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to do a deep dive into student wellbeing. For those of you in Australia, Australian government actually gave schools money towards wellbeing this year because, like all of us, we realise that when children feel connected, they learn better. Student wellbeing encompasses everything from positive behaviour support to social, emotional, but most of all, when I look at the actual government guidelines, inclusion. All members of the school community are active participants. Well, for many of our neurodiverse children, this is where we need to accommodate and adjust so they can be active participants. One of the things that drives me mad, and those of you who've been to my workshops, that people think just putting children in playgrounds, they'll make friends. In fact, many of my children come back dysregulated. Many of my children come back lonely. Many of my children come back confused. Many of my children come back rejected or bullied, So we need to be proactive, not reactive. So over the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be talking about being proactive. Like this week, we're going to look at creating playground plans. I was in a school a couple of weeks ago where the office staff said, the neurodiverse children end up in the office every day at lunchtime. What is going on? That is a symptom of something else. Why are they ending up in the office? I remember years ago I was at a school and one of my boys was ending up in the sick bay with loneliness. Can you imagine that? My doctorate research found that if the library's open, our students go there. Not because they're readers, because it's quiet, less sensorily overwhelming, and they feel a place they belong, like they can go into the library. But are they learning social skills there? Now, the word social skills can actually cause a bit of controversy. So I want to be really clear. I like what Dean Beadle calls it, social knowledge. But I think we all need social knowledge. I know with my 3 kids, Andrew and I have put a lot of work into social knowledge. In fact, a lot of the strategies I use with the whole class. That is why I wrote my Developing Social Skills book. Because in a classroom, in a complex and busy classroom, there are lots of students who need support with their social knowledge. I was talking to Year 2 teachers last week, and we were trying to work out, why do children today, in Year 2, they're still dobbing. Normally by 7 or 8 years of age, children aren't dobbing so-and-so hasn't started work, so-and-so, is it because of COVID? Is it because they're on their devices more? So actually sitting on their devices, I was telling the Year 2 teachers I couldn't believe we went out for Mother's Day and the number of families who were sitting there, intergenerational, grandparents, parents, and the kids were all handed devices. Sitting and being bored is a social skill. Listening to grandma tell a story you've heard before is a social skill. When we give children a device, they're missing an opportunity to learn those skills or knowledge or understanding. So I really believe that neurodiverse children need us to support them with their social knowledge. But over the next 3 weeks, I'm going to recommend that you actually do most of this with your whole class. Because one of the things I have found over the years really frustrating is when children go and do social skills programs or get taken out for social skills, but they come back, but the other children, and I hate the word other, but the rest of the class doesn't accommodate or doesn't react in the way the social script might have said. So I'd prefer we do it as a whole class so that we can all see we all engage differently and we understand each other, because inclusion is not just having a seat at the table, it's having a voice at the table. And 1 in 100 children are neurodiverse. So our neurotypical children need to learn to engage with neurodiverse children. So I'll let my high horse run away. But the thing I would love all of you to think about doing this week, and I'm sending you out a template, and I know you're going, but we're in year 10, Sue, or we're with 3-year-olds. So I need you to just think about how you could adjust or accommodate this. But I'm sending you out with your email a playground plan. This is so students actually make a plan, and it's from my Developing Social Skills book. And I particularly I actually devised this when I worked with a child who was oppositional defiant disorder, ODD, because I needed him to go out to the playground with a plan. So it will be, what will I play? Who will I play with? Where will I play? How will I play? What rules do I need to remember? Now, you might add to that some other things beyond what rules do I need to remember. So the student I made this for, it was about out of bounds, because often the other children would tell him to go and get a ball that was out of bounds because they knew he would do it. And they knew that was breaking a rule. So we'd have to remind him about going out of bounds. We often had to remind him about rules. And I used to say to staff, if he breaks a rule at lunchtime or morning tea, don't talk to him. He's a visual learner. There's all that sensory. Also, we have to be really careful when there's bystanders around for our oppositional children. So actually getting my EA to sit with him quietly and go through the rules was much better. The other thing I would like you to do, so make a playground plan, but get all the kids to make a playground plan. I want you to notice which children don't have a plan. I want you to notice maybe, children who don't know the rules, because the rules often change in a game. I remember one of my students telling me that handball, the rules change depending who was playing. And the way he made sense of it, because he used to get really angry that people were breaking the rules, the way he made sense of it was relating it to Mario Kart. And I've never played Mario Kart, but the way he explained it was Mario Kart has different levels. So when he played with one group of boys, it was Mario Kart level 1, Mario Kart level 2, Mario Kart level 3 with different boys, because he found that confusing that the rules change. But apparently some games, the rules change. So that was how he understood it. So actually finding out from children. In the book, there's a social script about, on page 62, on the page before, about asking to play. We have to be really careful, because if a student's in year 10, they don't go and ask, can I play? So this might be a conversation you have as a class. If you want to play with somebody or join in, how do you join in? I mean, girls in secondary school are often sitting in groups. How do you go over and join in the group or merge? This is really important. Now, the other thing that I think, based on talking to these year 2 teachers this week, we need to do some stop, think, do activities, which are on page 65 and 66, which is when someone annoys me, I need to stop. What do I think? Now, it's okay to think they're being annoying, but what do you actually do? What is the actions? When you lose a game, it's okay to think in your head, oh, I wish I'd won. We all think these things, don't we? You're allowed to think, they changed the rules. But the do isn't throw the ball or what are the actions? When I do not have anyone to play with, what can I stop, think, do? This is one that many of my neurodiverse students struggle with. When the teacher says to ignore someone, how many times have you said to a child, ignore someone? Do they actually know what action to take? So there is a whole lot of I can solve problems, and I would love you to actually do the stop, think, do. Stop, think about the problem. Think, what are the choices? Choose the best one. Do, try it. How did it work? And we've got a poster you can put in your playground. Now, any of you going, Sue, I don't have time to do this. I'm in a busy classroom. How much time are you wasting actually resolving playground issues? How many children are coming back dysregulated from the classroom so you can't get on with learning? See, children with neurodiversity desperately want connection and friends, in my experience. If just watch Love on the Spectrum, watch Heartbreak High, any of those shows. The problem is neurotypical people are very confusing, and we just seem to learn things innately. We seem to just know it, whereas our children need to be taught these skills. They don't just pick it up by being part of the playground. We expect them to. And because of their literalness, they often miss the subtleties, and they miss the body language, and they miss, if they don't look at people's faces, which is fine, but they're going to miss some of the subtle things that happen. So we need to actually accommodate our children by putting in place this as part of our wellbeing. It means that children need social emotional skills. So when a child loses, they have to have the social skills to say the right thing, but they also need the emotional skills to regulate their emotions. And that is a muscle. Practicing those emotional skills actually takes time. But remember, you can get angry, but you can also go quiet. You know, that we have to actually think, what does anger feel like for me might look different to you. So for those of you that do have some wellbeing budget left maybe, I would look at getting books like The Red Beast or The Panicosaurus or The Kid's Guide to Being Awesome and in Control. I'll put a whole lot of these with the blog, by the way. Or I have some great the social skills board game is expensive but amazing. I think it's about $95, but honestly, it is the best game. Or you might need a book like Why Do I Have To, which I have found so helpful with children who are oppositional defiant disorder. Like, why do I have to do my work? Why do I have to share my toys when I don't want to? Like a whole lot of why do I have to? So I would love you over the next week to think about getting every student to come up with a playground plan. Hear what they think they're going to do. You would be amazed how many of my students don't have a plan and they're just wandering around the playground. And then the stop, think, too. Now, the other thing that fascinated me with the Year 2 teachers this week was how many children don't know when to tell a teacher or an adult. Now, I know the concept of dobbing, you might be like, but children do need to tell an adult. Well, actually, this burns out their friends. If children are dobbing and they're like, imagine one of my students turned up at secondary school and he went and dobbed on kids vaping in the toilets. The kids have been vaping in there for years. Like, that isn't something to tell. That they are breaking a rule, I agree. But what do you think the other Year 7s think of a student who dobs like that? So we have to remember that there are things to tell and things not to tell. And normally children work this out by 7 or 8 years of age. But as I was discussing with these Year 2 teachers this week, it seems their students haven't worked that out, that they're constantly dobbing on each other. Like, so-and-so hasn't started work, so-and-so didn't eat their lunch. Like, which of these things as a teacher do you want to know about? So in the Developing Social Skills book on page 74, there is a thing about knowing when to tell a teacher or other adult. Yes? Children with ASD have great difficulty working out the subtle nuances that comprise daily life. Usually they quickly learn classroom rules and are quick to point out other children's non-compliance, even for minor misdemeanours. As one would expect, this behaviour does not help them make friends, and teachers quickly become tired of the same child dobbing on his peers. It's true. Imagine you've got 30 kids in your class and one child's constantly dobbing on things they might have been able to solve. And this is the point. They can say to the student, hey, eat your lunch if they want. Like you actually need to do the stop, think, do for these things as well. It can happen with siblings as well or cousins. So it's actually really important. So I'll read you the when to tell social script. And of course, you can adjust this, okay? Lots of things happen in the classroom and in the playground. Most of the things that happen are okay. Teachers and adults do not need to know about all the things that happen, but teachers or other adults do need to know when something happens which is unsafe or very dangerous. Sometimes children need to tell adults things that have happened in the classroom or on the playground. Sometimes it is not necessary to tell adults everything that has happened on the playground. Now, personally, I would brainstorm as a class what things you would need to tell the teacher. And in the classroom, I would make this visual. I would make a poster. What to tell the teacher, what not to tell the teacher. Helping the child see it visually, because so many people say to me, "I've told them that. I've told them that." No. Children with neurodiversity are visual learners. You need it written down. You need to be able to refer back to it. I met a brilliant Year 4 teacher in Canberra many years ago, and she just had a scrapbook. And she used the Developing Social Skills book. But what she would do is she would make it this like a visual, like when to tell. And she'd write it down, when not to tell, in the playground, in the classroom. Just a quick, she'd say it'd be like a 5-minute activity. But then her neurodiverse children could refer back to it, and she could refer back to it as a whole class. Remember, we've talked about this. Let's have a look. Let's add that one on. So it was like a living social document of social knowledge. I agree with Dean Beadle. It's social knowledge. It is often difficult to work out what I should tell adults and what is not okay to tell adults. Like, it is difficult. Sorry, I'm jumping back into the social script. I need to try to remember that it's not my job to tell adults everything that other children do. I could not tell adults if other children say rude words, pick up sticks, or do other things they have been told not to do. However, I do need to tell adults if another child is hurting or being hurt or being bullied, or I am being hurt or being bullied. Obviously, that's really important. Or if children are saying rude things to my neurodiverse child, I want them to tell the teacher. But if they just hear 2 other children being rude or saying things to each other, see, all children swear. They just know where to do it. So in secondary, do we want 2 kids who are swearing at each other? Do we want our neurodiverse child to go to the office to tell the office about that? Is that child's problem? Up to you to decide. But you have to remember that part of wellbeing is being connected. Is that helping the child build connection with their peers or not? See, many of my students burn their friends out, and it breaks my heart because they make a friend and then they start dobbing on the friend. So we do need to teach this. And this is the important sentence. Other children are responsible for themselves and their behaviour. We need our children to understand that. If the other child has a problem, you can go up and say, "Are you okay? Do you want me to get some help?" But actually, you're not responsible for everyone else. And many of my children become hyper-vigilant. They cannot relax because they're worried about everyone else. So this is important. Then the next sentence says, if I tell adults the little things other children are doing wrong, the other children will get cross at me. And this is called dobbing. Other children do not like being dobbed on. I need to try and remember that I am only responsible for myself and my behaviour. I hope, jumping out of the story now, I hope you can accommodate or adjust that or think about the students you know. See, when you plan up with that playground plan, some of my students' playground plan is actually wandering around watching everyone else. Some of your schools have amazing playground clubs or calm areas, but some of my students aren't accessing this. So maybe this is where you look at that, or you might look at setting up a club around their interests if you discover they're not actually engaged. So I would love you to think, what is the educational outcome of the playground? Why do we send children into the playground? To relax, to get rid of their wriggles and jiggles, to regulate, to come back in ready to learn, to connect, to make friends, to solve problems, actually. Part of the playground is that solving problems. It's actually being out there having to solve problems, to regulate your emotions. This is all part of what playgrounds are about. I mean, I love it when I was in a preschool the other week and they've got a tree and they supervise it, but the children climb the tree. Think of all the skills they're learning climbing a tree, this beautiful big gum tree. It's fantastic. They've got chooks, and the children get to feed the chooks and learn to hold this is all fabulous. Through play, we learn. I love that. But is the neurodiverse child learning? Are they growing? Are they growing friendships? Are they making connections? So maybe we need to accommodate and adjust by putting in place some specific things for them. However, I think it's better when you do it with the whole class. There is a lot of controversy around making children mask and making them, be someone they're not. I think all of us around social skills actually do mask a little bit. Think of yourself when you go into the staff room. Do you maybe don't want to share you've had a bad weekend? And there is a fine line between masking your true self and actually, when you first meet people, hi, how are you? And not putting on, but actually using your social knowledge in that situation. I read a really good blog on the weekend about a lady that was talking about, as a PDAer, who was talking about her different types of masking. And she felt this sort of social skills and social knowledge isn't masking. It's actually helpful to know these skills. However, she did acknowledge that sometimes after a social experience, she's exhausted. But I know lots of introverts who are exhausted by social experiences. Now, okay, you might have a different opinion to me about this, but I love this. They're not a party pooper, they're pooped by the party. So some children, maybe 40 minutes in the playground is too long. Maybe just 20 minutes in the playground. Maybe some children actually need a shorter time, that it's too exhausting for them. You might look at a shorter social experience and then they can come into your calm area or read a book or something like that. In my experience, though, the more the children actually are engaged and enjoying the playground, the longer they can stay out there. It's more when they're lonely, isolated, being rejected by their peers, that the dysregulation happens. Think of yourself, if you've ever been to a party or somewhere that you know no one, how exhausting that is. So by creating those connections through clubs or activities, or maybe in the library having out some board games, or maybe creating a passive playground. I love passive playgrounds, which is just a classroom that's open with board games out, and it's a quiet, you might have music on, but it's not a loud board game room, obviously a bit of chat, but we won't be like raucous board games. So looking at that, looking at how can we help children develop their social knowledge? Because remember, part of student wellbeing is them actually being able to have those social emotional skills. We know with social emotional learning, 2/3 of children's learning improves through social and emotional learning, through those SEL programs. However, many of the programs aren't designed for our neurodiverse children. So we need to think about how do we actually give the children the skills. So I'm going to include this week in the email and on my blog that playground plan, the Stop, Think, Do. My Developing Social Skills book is great to use with the whole class. I have a course on social skills. It's a 3-hour accredited course if any of you are looking for some accredited learning. And it goes through lots of different ways to help children with their social skills. But I do think that part of it is us noticing. So even if you don't want to do a playground plan, I would love you to stop and stand back and notice. Does this child have connection in our school? Are they only connecting with the adults? Are they connecting with anyone? Are they playing with their siblings? My siblings research says often they're seeking out their siblings, which is fine, but children need connection. My doctorate research found that when I asked parents, why do you send your child to the local school? It is to make connections and friends. So here is the hard question for you that my doctorate research found was sort of the Lipton tea test to how inclusion is going. How many birthday parties or social events outside school has this child been included in? How many activities has this child been part of? Because if the answer is 0 or 1, I want you to compare that to their peers. Well, how much are the peers doing together? Are the peers playing sport together, doing social activities? Are, the year 10s going to the shops after school? Is this child included? Because if inclusion is stopping at the school gate, that isn't inclusion. That is a child being part at the table, but not having a voice at the table. So if we want true inclusion and we want to improve this student's learning by improving their well-being, we need to think about how can we help them be part of those social activities. And they are the playground. I want you to start with the playground. Next week, I'm going to do a deeper dive into little fun activities you can do with the whole class. But I'm going to just throw over to a little thing I recorded of my daughter Eliza talking about social skills of us as a family. So Eliza, I've just been sharing on my podcast all about social skills and how I've used a lot of the strategies with you 3 kids over the years. Can you tell me how you use some of the things that Dad and I taught you?
Well, I think one of the things that I didn't realize as a kid was you guys teaching us social skills, but I use all the time now, is whenever we'd go in like a car to see grandma and grandpa, or going to a party, we'd always have to come up with 3 questions that you could ask them. So I would call someone for their birthday and we'd all talk beforehand, what are 3 questions that you could ask grandma? And you'd be like, okay, are you going to go play bridge with your friends? Or you kind of come up with quite specific things. And I think now what I realize I do is if I'm going to any kind of event, whether it be for work or just a party, I feel less anxious because in my head, I've already come up with ideas of what I can talk to about people. And it kind of just empowers me to go into events and just kind of enjoy them more, because I find that otherwise you kind of start stressing about what you're going to say. And I think that's something that I didn't realize was a social skill until I was kind of reflecting later on.
Well, I think actually when you first realized as you were working at my workshops,
yeah.
my listeners will remember you used to come along and be at the door and greet them when you first finished school. And I remember in the car on the way home, you're like, I had no idea that's what you and Dad were doing when you were prepping us, what adults are going to be there, what are questions you can ask, or when you go to a birthday party, what are some of the things to say to the adults when you leave the party, and that we just pre-warn you about the skills you needed to go in somewhere.
I think why it worked, it wasn't like you said, okay, we're going to work on your social skills now. It was just a conversation we'd have as a family. And I think that's why it just became so ingrained in just our ability to create conversation. It's just, and I think it's so important as well in a work environment. I think being able to do that and just knowing 3 things about your colleagues that you can ask them about on their weekend, I think it just removes a lot of anxiety around conversations with people.
Well, I think what it is too, you forget other people are anxious. So if you know how to ask questions and make them at ease, it's really, really, really important. Well, I hope you found that interesting. The thing that Eliza talked about there was us preparing her for social activities. What are 3 questions you can ask somebody? So again, that comes from the Developing Social Skills book, which was Conversations with Friends on page 38, 39, and conversation starters, with a teacher. What is going to be happening at school today? What did you do on the weekend? If your teacher's been unwell, ask them how they are well. Whereas children in the class, you might ask what they did last night, what TV shows they're watching, what games they're playing. These are important to know. Whereas a neighbour, you might ask about the dog or the weather. We all ask different people different things. But I just want to link back from what Eliza said to what Dean Beadle says. So, Dean, what we were giving the children was social skills. But Eliza said, but you didn't call it social skills. Dean Beadle says if someone had said to him he had to go to a social skills class, he wouldn't have wanted to go. But what he went to was drama. And through his drama class, he learnt different tone of voice. He learnt different postures. He learnt role playing. He learned a whole lot of skills through drama. So I don't think you want to start a social skills club. I agree with Dean. But imagine just starting a Star Wars club or an Uno club. Imagine starting a board game club. There are so many ways we can learn social knowledge, but calling it social skills, and I know my book's called Developing Social Skills because most of us relate to that, but hopefully now you've listened to this podcast, you're like, yeah, I get. Actually, preparing. What Eliza talked about, we pre-warned her. That's why I'm saying a playground plan before the child goes out is really important. And often you can just create that one playground plan. And with my ODD boy, actually, we only had about 4. One was around, not picking up big gum trees in the playground. One was about going out of bounds. One was about not going back into the classrooms because he used to go back into the classroom, like what rules he needed to remember. But remember, we weren't just focusing on the rules. We're talking about what he can do in the playground and who he would play with. The other thing, last thing I'd like you to check, when children talk about who they're going to play with, take a notice. Is a neurodiverse child saying they're playing with someone but it's not reciprocated? I have seen this with the girls so many times. This is a chance for you to do a little check on your student wellbeing. Which children do have friends, don't have friends? I have children who walk around the playground, know every kid's name in the school, seemingly seem happy, but desperately want connection. So I would love you over the next week to have a look at that. And next week, we're going to do a deeper dive into some other ideas around social emotional learning and student wellbeing. I hope you've got some great tips and strategies to make a difference. Remember, strategies wear out and not every strategy works for everybody. If you're ready to dive in deeper to more strategies and ideas to make a difference, I'd highly recommend you consider Dr. Tony Atwood or my online courses. For more information, visit my website www.sulaki.com.au.